So this reading message, channel message, whatever it's supposed to be, I'm just going with the flow here. Especially because all I can think of is that I do have a lot of educational videos that are going to need to be out there, which are going to be mixed here because it's interesting. You know how God works. Can't put him in a box. And he's communicating in a different way so the enemy doesn't understand what it really means, but it will mean something to those who need this message to mean something, if that makes sense. He specifically wants whoever this is who lands on this message to understand that you are part of a bigger, much larger plan than the programming constructing condition that most of us are needed to endure. If you don't understand much of what I'm saying, it's time to continue the colonization, okay? Continue understanding that patriarchy is bad, misogyny, bigotry, colonial mindset, poverty mindset, which is most of us who are generational breaker and the real revolutionary fighters who I'm speaking right now. If you don't consider yourself a revolutionary fighter, this is not your message. Sorry. I'm speaking with a specific woman, Amazonian warrior, African, indigenous. It's like you've come here multiple lifetimes. Things happen to you, of course, but you're able to adapt, okay? I only took out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decks, and I don't know, it's just I was called and I just left it like this, especially because I was in my crying, because I think you guys think that it's easy to watch those content of children being amputated and seen covered in debris and rubble and blown to pieces, brain blown to pieces. I have other content creators that also are eyewitnesses as well. And
أطفال يتم انتشالهم من تحت الركام. الله أكبر ولله الحمد.
Even if Hamas ceased to exist tomorrow, the blockade isn't going anywhere.
Right.
So the blockade of the Gaza Strip is actually not a reaction to Hamas. It's a reaction to the fact that the Gaza Strip has 2 million Palestinians, the vast majority of whom are refugees, the vast majority of whom want to come back to their homes that are now in Israel. Right. And if you trace the way that Israel has dealt with the Gaza Strip, back to the 1940s and 1950s, there were blockades, there were extrajudicial assassinations, there were imprisonments, there were forms of separation, forms of pacification, all the policies, military assaults, so all the policies that we see Israel carrying out on the Gaza Strip today, ostensibly as self-defense against Hamas, actually predate Hamas by decades, not by years, by decades. And so the reality is that the Gaza Strip has always been the core of Palestinian resistance. Even Fatah leadership emerges there, right? Because of what the Gaza Strip is, because of its demography, because of its population, the Gaza Strip has always presented a problem for Israel, and Israel has always tried to pacify it. And so Hamas, and this is the main argument of the book, is that Hamas is only a fig leaf that allows Israel to retroactively justify all these policies. So now we see the blockade, we see the separation of the Gaza Strip because of Hamas, when in fact Israel is separating the Gaza Strip to maintain a Jewish majority while it continues to hold on to the West Bank.
Beginning March 30th, 2018, they tried nonviolent civil resistance. And what was the Israeli response? There's a 250-page single-spaced UN report describing the response. Israel took its best snipers, lined them up along the perimeter fence, while there was this festive atmosphere among the Palestinians. There was music, there was dancing, there was song. The snipers, I'm quoting the report, intentionally targeted children, medics, journalists, disabled people. They described double amputees 300 meters from the perimeter fence that Israel shot. When they didn't kill them, they targeted them from the kneecap down, paralyzed them. One Israeli sniper boasted to Haaretz newspaper he shot 42 kneecaps in one day. 42 children and adults paralyzed for life.
As a Christian, I follow Jesus, who is a Palestinian, who in my scriptures at the age of 2 had to flee because of the killing of innocent children. He fled to Egypt. He was a Palestinian refugee. For my Christian colleagues and anyone who professes to follow Jesus, please do not talk to me about making room for Jesus in your heart if you cannot make room at this time in this space for the Palestinian who needs our help and our safety. It is incumbent upon us all to be present with those who are marginalized and oppressed. And in this moment, in this time, we need to be present with our siblings who are experiencing this oppression.
You want to talk about the hostages? Let's talk about the hostages. Let's talk about the 1 million Palestinians Israel has taken hostage since 1967, including tens of thousands of children. Let's talk about the 21,000 plus Palestinians that Israel currently holds hostage in encampments and prisons, where they suffer the most horrific, unspeakable torture at the hands of the IOF.
Propaganda. Many use the word when talking about countries like North Korea, Kazakhstan, Iran. Countries viewed as authoritarian through the lens of the Western media. Press freedom, freedom of thought. People use those terms when talking about countries like the United States, France, Australia, democracies. In 1988, Noam Chomsky co-authored a book with Edward Herman called Manufacturing Consent. It blasted apart the notion that media acts as a check on political power, that media inform the public, serve the public, so that we can better engage in the political process. In fact, media manufacture our consent. They tell us what those in power need them to tell us so we can fall in line. Democracy is staged with the help of media that work as propaganda machines. Media operate through 5 filters. The first has to do with ownership. Mass media firms are big corporations. Often they're part of even bigger conglomerates. Their endgame, profit. And so it's in their interests to push for whatever guarantees that profit. Critical journalism takes second place to the needs and interests of the corporation. The second filter exposes the real role of advertising. Media costs a lot more than consumers will ever pay. So who fills the gap? Advertisers. And what are the advertisers paying for? Audiences. And so it isn't so much that the media are selling you a product, their output. They're also selling advertisers a product, you. How does the establishment manage the media? That's the third filter. Journalism cannot be a check on power because the very system encourages complicity. Governments, corporations, big institutions know how to play the media game. They know how to influence the news narrative. They feed media scoops, official accounts, interviews with the experts. They make themselves crucial to the process of journalism. So those in power and those who report on them are in bed with each other. If you want to challenge power, you'll be pushed to the margins. Your name won't be down. You won't be getting in. You've lost your access. You've lost the story. When the media, journalists, whistleblowers, sources stray away from the consensus, they get flagged. That's the fourth filter. When the story is inconvenient for the powers that be, you'll see the flak machine in action, discrediting sources, trashing stories, and diverting the conversation. To manufacture consent, you need an enemy, a target. That common enemy is the fifth filter. Communism, terrorists, immigrants, a common enemy. A boogeyman to fear helps corral public opinion. 5 filters, one big media theory. Consent is being manufactured all around you, all the time.
Dios te salve Palestina, llena eres de gracia. El Señor y el mundo estén contigo. Bendita eres entre todos los países y bendito es el fruto de tu lucha por niñas como Jesús. Santa Palestina, Madre de la Resiliencia, ruega por quien por ti no reza y por quien de ti se olvida, ahora y en la hora de tu libertad. Amén.
So the next time you hear a person saying this,
I'm very clear. Israel must have that, does have that right to defend herself.
You can just answer back with this. I think you'll find that according to the International Court of Justice, the highest authority in international law, Israel's occupation and annexation of the Palestinian territories are unlawful, and its discriminatory laws and policies against Palestinians violate the prohibition on racial segregation and apartheid. As you must know, occupying powers have a duty of care towards the population that they occupy that far exceeds any right to protect themselves against what could be considered a consequence of their own violent, kleptocratic, and ethnocidal occupation. So, I urge you to find another simplistic one-liner to try to justify to yourself why you're still supporting a regime that is starving more than 1.5 million people after potentially having murdered more than 186,000 civilians. And also, a country is not a her.
Everything I've read about colonial propaganda, I'm seeing day in, day out, as Western media tries to justify Israel's mass murder of indigenous Palestinians. As decolonial writers tell us, it's first and foremost about the erasure of history and context. They erase the history of Palestine and the Israeli colony, and they erase the context of Israeli apartheid, military occupation, and daily violence. They erase Palestinian stories, their art, their culture, their resilience. In essence, they erase Palestinians and replace them with a mythological, otherized character, who, having been stripped of their history, their context, their beauty, are represented as terrorists who are inherently violent, while the Israeli colony is represented as defending itself against the people it's colonizing. This is what erasure lets you do. Like raising a forest creates fertile soil, erasure creates the conditions for planting colonial myths. And though the specifics might differ, the myth has always been about indigenous people being savages and the colonizers bringing civilization. And though they're trying their best to invert reality, the world can see who the real savages are, and colonial myth-making is losing its power.
Hey, has it occurred to you that your leaders keep telling you to be proud of your country so that when your leaders do terrible things in your country's name, rather than holding your terrible leaders accountable for the terrible things they're spending your tax money to accomplish, you start attacking the people who are criticizing your leaders because you feel like your pride is being attacked? See, when your national pride is central to your identity, that means if you acknowledge that the criticism might just be valid, you have to start rethinking your identity, which is a lot of work. So you'd rather just believe that your side is the we're number one greatest of all time good guy side, because that way you get to feel a sense of accomplishment without actually, accomplishing anything.
Malcolm X was in Gaza exactly 60 years ago. And there was one chance meeting that changed him forever. When he left Gaza, he wrote a scathing criticism of Zionism that still holds true today.
The freedom of these people by any means necessary.
In 1964, civil rights leader, revolutionary Malcolm X toured Africa and the Middle East, meeting with anti-colonial leaders when he decided to visit Gaza. He was met with a lot of love. He even went and prayed with religious leaders at a local mosque. But it wasn't until he visited the Khan Yunis refugee camp, which is made up of Palestinians ethnically cleansed by Israel in 1948, that things changed. Through a chance encounter, he ran into Palestinian poet Harun Hashem Rashid. During that meeting, Malcolm X learned about the Khan Yunis massacre of 1956, when Israel executed about 300 Palestinians in cold blood. He was horrified by what he heard. This is the same Khan Yunis that is being bombarded and massacred by Israel today. Malcolm X saw Zionism for what it was. In an article he penned right after his 2-day visit to Gaza, he referred to it as a new form of colonialism, and that European imperialists wisely placed Israel where she could geographically divide the Arab world and to divide Africans against Asians. 60 years later, his words ring true. My name is Sadim, and if you like stories about politics, history, and culture, follow for more.
The Palestinian state belongs to the Palestinian people. This is a fact. Zionism is certainly not a liberation movement because it never fought against any imperialism. As a matter of fact, today, Zionism is the baby, child, and infant protector of imperialism in the Middle East. It carries out the interests of American imperialism. As a matter of fact, Zionism and American imperialism is like this. If our tax dollars would stop giving money to Israel, the state would sink tomorrow. In addition to this, Zionism has nothing to do with anything religion, nothing. All religions are concerned with human beings after they die. That's what religions are for. Islam will tell you what happens to you when you die. As a matter of fact, this which forces you to live a good life so that after death you'll be able to enjoy the rewards of heaven. The same is true for Judaism. But Zionism says nothing about the individual after they're dead. They don't give a damn about you. Zionism has nothing to do with religion at all. And one should not make the confusion here. The Palestinian state belongs to the Palestinian people. This is a fact.
Everyone knows that everything that the IDF has done and continues to do is a reflection of Israeli society. But this is actually not a flex, it's more of a confession. And this is exactly why settler colonial apartheid regimes should never exist and should be completely dismantled. Because their idea of what is ethical is completely different from the rest of the world. It's like they are in a different timeline, different dimension altogether. To them, as well as Western imperialists that defend and fund this, what is considered ethical is not saving the lives of people. It is expanding the empire at all costs.
You are tired just because you're sharing about what's happening here in Gaza. And we live more than 11 months in the war. Today I wanted to tell the world that we are human. We are dreamers. We fly from a bombing to another bombing and keep our certificate because we are determined to complete our dream. I wanted to tell the world that we deserve life. So please, share our voice, our message to the world. We're trying hard to send our message to you. We spend days just to upload one video. And may we will be martyred and then our voice will arrive to you. So please, follow us and share this video everywhere because one day we will be great. Or we will be a martyr. Goodbye.
Good morning from Al-Mawasi. Almost 1 day ago we survived an airstrike. A lot of kids were killed, a lot of kids massacred. They targeted a place where there's a lot of people in an already crowded area. That night was very traumatic for all of us. This is the 4th airstrike. I survived seconds away. People were killed, people were distraught. The sceneries, and we tried to avoid many deaths. This is what's interesting about us Palestinians, is that we've seen all this death and we keep pushing forward. As doctors, we have to push forward just like the rest of us, and we go through a lot of traumas and we're not allowed to process it by any means, and we try our best. You go to work and you pretend that nothing happens, and you have to keep pushing forward no matter what. You may lose your brother, you you may lose your family members, your dear friends. But you have to get back to work and do your best. Because if you don't keep pushing forward, people are gonna die. The amount of mental stress health workers go through here in Gaza is double, if not triple, if not 100 times more than the normal person in Gaza, which is, well, he's suffering too much already. And yeah, we're back at work at European Gaza Hospital. It's reopening and we're doing our best here.
This is all available. Like, they are live streaming. They're, as soon as they can, post. And the reason why they're doing this because they know the Zionist entity empire, imperialists, the US, and all these people in the media, the gaslighting, trying to hide the truth, their crimes. They're murdering, butchering children, women, and men because of this ideology. Very toxic and disgusting ideology. But it comes from colonialism, it comes from white supremacy, it comes from a long time ago, that this disease, parasite, and I spoke to you guys about this, Zionism is a disease, it's a parasite. And the fact that your own leaders, government, prime minister, president, Democrat, Republican, whatever the fuck, liberals, it's an illusion. They all have it. This greed, gluttony, energy. And whoever you are exposing them. Okay? For some reason, as I'm looking into this, and I'm also decolonizing and doing my own grieving, my own thing, because, you know, it's not normal that we're still in 11 months and 300 and something days, and then in other Congo, we are literally yelling at people, do not buy iPhone 16. Do not buy iPhone 16. If you're okay with that shit, please leave my channel. Fuck off. Okay? A lot of us, we have shifted, even like myself, like I could not, if I needed to buy a car, it had it in, and I wanted to be hybrid. All I can think of is like, oh my God, the children in Congo and stuff like that. So I was looking for old version and praying to God, like, please God, no new car, no, right? So 2019, but still, like, I felt like shit the whole, like, you know, we need to have that mentality, like, we can reuse stuff. This consumerism, it is a sickness as well. But we're not even there. What I'm talking about, you see, it comes out because whoever I'm speaking to, your energy, my energy is very similar. You're an artist. You want the truth with a detective. You constantly seek the truth, and this is why you're mostly hated. This is why someone ghosted you and rejected you as well. This person is constantly on your energy. You have a soul contract with them. And if you're watching and you understand who your person is, if they are revolutionary fighters, someone who speaks the truth, a storyteller, and this is not their first time. Whoever this is, they've been here in multiple lifetimes doing the exact same thing, trying to finish the job. God's job. This is a messenger, a real earth angel. If you don't identify yourself, this is why I'm giving personality traits, because please use discernment. This message is not for everybody. But whoever is meant to, you understand you're a storyteller. You have goddess energy. Whoever you are, it's just as hidden, your clothes, right? Because you need to be protected. God is not, there's none of that anymore. You're a poet as well. I was looking at the Jesus deck that I have, okay? And this is what came up. So this is for you as well. He wants to tell you this, and it's specific for you. You'll know what to do with this message if it's for you. If it's not for you, you will just go against it. You won't understand it, and you will, most of the time, rebel against it, right? Because most people who have weaponized the Christ's words, is the Bible, as a form of use for oppression, colonization, and doing horrendous things to people because God said so, and it's not even the fact. Most people that quote the Bible and do all this stuff, they don't even like read the Bible, right? Or those who really read it, you really understand that it has nothing to do with capitalism, colonialism, that most of the Bible, in most areas, if you really read it, it's to solidify the dehumanization of people of color and also women, right? No, we know that The Bible is very patriarchy, and this is something that also Jesus recommends us, a lot of us, and Holy Spirit, that this is why discernment is important. This is why you have to decolonize. Religion was used as a weapon to slave, murder, rape, oppress women, children, right? Yeah. Let that sink in. If you understand to this point and you resonate with this message, you are that true warrior that your ancestors manifested, been praying for. Take your job seriously. And this person needs to take it serious too. That's the point. The reason why it keeps coming back to this two couple, this is a very powerful couple. Whoever you are, that you're single or this person's single, I don't know, we're going to tap into it. Could be that they chose someone over you. And then I keep confirming multiple times there was a love spell. I know a lot of people, oh, that doesn't work on people. Yes, it does. Especially if someone, a manipulator and controlling narcissist, most narcissists, they do the shit. When they want something to control, manipulate someone, they don't give a fuck who they hurt, who they want it, that's what it is. And if it makes them look good, if they can get what they want, if their needs are satisfied because they never satisfied, or they're never happy, or they, you know, and they're okay with disrespecting people, and also they have this sadistic fucking toxic energy of feeling happy when someone is suffering or in misery. That's how you know, right? So these people also, they don't really care about other people. So this is another thing where this person is seeing their environment, understanding their environment, and could be there's someone that it was kind of like that. They're like, I don't care, it's not my business, right? But this is someone who actually understands now that because being connected as a soul contract intense. So this could be heavy chosen people, which I will get into that. The lessons I learned from us will never be forgotten. So whoever you are, you have taught this person a lesson, whether you believe that or not. For some of you, you're gonna feel kind of like, how did I teach this person a lesson if they disappear and that's me? Or I've never heard from this person again, or something happened that it was kind of like hidden, or was meant to be hidden for a certain amount of time. And then the truth now is being revealed. Just like the truth of, for 76 years of genocide in Palestine, or, you know, the so occupied Palestine, Israel. Yes, that. It's kind of like being in our faces. So for a lot of you, this needs to be on your face. And maybe you, if you're reading energy, or you read energy yourself, or you're listening to other energies, and I really, really hope that you're listening from people who are decolonizing and speaking for Palestine, Congo, and Sudan, not just about themselves, and endorsing and enabling capitalism. Right?
Uh-oh, do you not know what the word socialism means? That's okay. Someone sent you this video to help you out. Socialism is when workers own the factory they work in. I'm going to use factories in this example, but for industries that don't use factories, like in a restaurant, socialism is when workers own their means of production. So the chefs would own the kitchen. Now imagine an iPhone factory. It's probably located somewhere in the world where Apple doesn't have to pay very high wages. The factory definitely isn't owned by the workers. It's not publicly owned either. It's privately owned. It's owned by some rich guys who own it in order to get richer. It's the capitalist goal to pay their workers as little as possible. That way, they can make as much profits as possible. And it's not because they're bad people. It's actually their duty to you. You're the consumer, and you'll choose the product that has the lowest price. If a capitalist decides to be a good person and pay their workers fair wages, it won't last long, because eventually a competing company will come along who doesn't really care about that stuff, and here we are back at square one. That's why capitalism is really a race to the bottom. Sure, my iPhone might have some value, but what about the value of treating your workers right? What about the value of not polluting our earth? When I go to buy a product, it shouldn't be up to me as an individual to value other people's lives. That's why when people control production under socialism, we can set those values. We can say, hey, chemical plant, no more dumping in the river for you. Pollution affects future generations, and future generations are not our competition. competition. But when things are privately owned for profit, everyone's your competition. You probably noticed that this isn't an iPhone. This is a Huawei phone. Huawei is a worker-owned company that the United States government has banned from selling products in the United States because they actually compete with Apple everywhere else in the world, and a lot of our politicians own stocks in Apple. Go figure. Capitalists like the United States government have a thorough history of trying to destroy socialism across the world. You probably never even heard of the worker-owned rideshare app here in New York City that was giving Uber and Lyft a run for their money. That's because Lyft just bought it and destroyed it. Socialists have learned that workers simply owning their own factories can't actually happen without a huge defense in place. Now that's where things get tricky. This is where the notorious authoritarianism of socialism comes from. If you study Latin American history, you will see how brutal, undemocratic, and terroristic the United States has been to places that tried to go even a little bit to the left. And every time a socialist state actually defends itself, then we blame them for being too defensive. Like, just let us infiltrate a little bit.
Get ready with me while we talk about how Jesus was from Palestine. He was Palestinian. His skin was brown, he wasn't blonde, and he hated capitalism. He overturned the tables when he went to market, then turned his gaze to the establishment, said, "Fuck you, Pontius Pilate." Jesus was from Palestine and born in Bethlehem, a Che Guevara of his time, deemed the king of men. He hated all the rich and favored all the poor, and he knelt down to wash their feet when they were tired and sore. Jesus was from Palestine, and please let it be known that he was Palestinian from birth till he was grown. And when he died upon the cross, look to him from the pew. He screamed to all humanity, "You know not what you do." Jesus was from Palestine, and his one and only order was to love each other, regardless of race, creed, or border. Do to others as they do to you, and murdered by fascists. Because he preached equality, he was a communist. Now, Christians claim to love Jesus and built a faith on him. Except all that they stand for, Jesus would call a sin. Divide and conquer, colonize, pit one against the other, monetize, incentivize hatred for one another. Christians could not be further from Jesus Christ's creed. Their cruelty misses all the marks, from the river to the sea. They shower bombs and enable the ones he hates the most, then beat his words until they're dead. Is that the Holy Ghost? Jesus was from Palestine, and I think he was proud, and I think he wanted to live more than he was allowed. But the powers that be said, "Oh no, your freedom carries danger," and so they murdered him brutally. Does this not sound familiar? Jesus was from Palestine. He was Palestinian. His skin was brown. He wasn't blonde, and he would not be a Christian. So if you are so inclined, and it's how you identify, then do as your good Savior and stand for Palestine. P.S. From the Father to the Son, from the river to the sea, in the name of all the gods above, let Palestine be free. God bless.
Hi, my name is Sharif and I'm a Palestinian living within Israel, and this is how it happened. In 1948, more than 700,000 Palestinians were kicked out of the original towns and villages. Still, a minority of Palestinians, almost 150,000 Palestinians, managed to remain within Israeli territories, some of which were also refugees who left the original towns but still remained within the Israeli territories. These Palestinians were granted Israeli citizenships, along with 19 years of violent military rule. That does not make us Israelis. The Nakba also happened to us. Our lands were taken, our villages were destroyed. My own grandmother was kicked out of the city of Bisan. They lost their house in Bisan, the land they had bought in Bisan, and all the money they put in the bank. In 1948, there was a campaign to occupy the Galilee and my own city of Nazareth, during which the Nazarenes surrendered, and they signed an agreement with the leader of the campaign at the time, a Canadian Zionist called Ben Dunkelman. The only condition that the Palestinians had to surrender the city of Nazareth was that everyone in Nazareth, including original Nazarenes and refugees who came from Safuriye, from Jadal, from elsewhere, would not be harmed, and that the city would not be ethnically cleansed. And Dunkelman actually agreed to these terms. But later on, the officer above him and David Ben-Gurion actually told him to expel the people of Nazareth. But he refused. And to this day, Dunkelman, if you read about him, he is mentioned in Palestinian history books as the honest Zionist officer. Because, unlike many others, he actually kept his word. Nazareth was this close to being ethnically cleansed. And what stopped Nazareth from being ethnically cleansed is that Nazareth was not an important Jewish city, and that it is a very important city for the Christian countries that supported Israel at the time. In short, we cannot be Israeli Arabs. We cannot identify with the entity that almost expelled us, with the entity that massacred us in 1956 in Kufr Qasim and elsewhere, and the entity that kept on stealing our lands, that keeps killing our families in the West Bank and in Gaza. So next time you want to refer to us, call us Palestinians.
Isn't mass media talking about the fact that Israel is now trying to bully US Congress members and politicians to getting the ICJ to drop the case against them? Israeli Foreign Ministry sent a classified cable to America basically instructing them on how to get the ICJ to drop the case, saying, and I quote, "We are asking you to immediately work with US lawmakers on both federal and state level, with governors and Jewish organizations to put pressure on South Africa to change its policy towards Israel." But this is the most craziest part of the message. Pushing anti-Israeli moves in international courts will come with a heavy price. That sounds like a direct threat to me. We'll have to see where this goes, but it's absolutely insane that a country like Israel can just bully and taunt people in one of the most powerful countries in the world, US, to get them to get a court case dropped against them. A court case which, in my opinion, is very well deserved. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below.
Okay, so here's a scripture that he wants you to write it down, put it somewhere. Could be a protection. A lot of people say now, they're saying like the Bible is like a grimoire, like a book of spells. Okay, well, let it be protection spell. Let it be love, unconditional and breaking all generational, disgusting, manipulative, abusive love spells from people and people trying to take away someone's free will, which they can't. Or maybe in a way God makes them like, it's kind of like a little joke for him, like he let them like think that it works, and then all of a sudden it turns out that absolutely destroys their life. So be my guest. For a lot of you, I do recommend you to stop doing that fucking shit. Altar, rituals, whatever. If you're gonna do an altar, just praise God, like praise the creator who created you. You know, altar, okay, for what? Like, what are you worshiping? Worship liberation for all of us, you know, nobody's free until anybody's free. Create an altar to end capitalism. Do it for revolutionary causes. Do it for others. Do it for the fact that you want not your empathy to completely leave you, that your humanity is intact, right? Because you are letting the oppressors get away with dehumanizing, not just us, everyone, right? It's embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially we come from ancestors who fought so hard for us to have all the things that we have now. And then we still give the credit and power to these motherfucking people that continue trying to oppress us with the cop cities, with all this bullshit, right? All these laws. I can't believe that Canada even has the audacity to even like put that out there. But again, I'm not surprised because it comes from a racist, genocidal, war criminal, our prime minister. Like, is he that insane that he really thinks that Zionism is the way to go? After all this evidence, after the ICJ and now even South Africa, thank God, and I think all countries should be doing this, suing the United States for still selling weapons, to going against international law, right? Because we know now, by now, that Netanyahu needs to be indicted and it needs to be imprisoned. And everybody in the Israel government and all the lobbyists, all the APAC, like everyone is complicit. These apps, these owners. Yeah, I see you CEOs looking, oh no, she's fucking too much true. Fucking cut it off. right? How nice is to sit in your comfortable home with clean water, clean air, living out of other people's misery and suffering. How comfortable. And then just say, okay, well, that, and just decide what other people rights or livelihood or things just because you can. You see, that's the biggest illusions that I feel like Father God is just mocking all of these people who are in power, who think that you're going to continue getting away. He's just allowing you to accumulate your own karmic situation, and not only for you, but for your next king, for your legacy, for your bloodline. So a lot of people who are accepting dirty money, you are accepting, like you are being given consent. And for a lot of people, it's like, oh, is it that? Like, absolutely. This is a dark energy, dark world we live in. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, we have the good and the bad within us. Okay, yes, of course. People have, they know now, obviously, humanity, that what it means to be dehumanized, right? But also you also understand how having no humanity within you, what it really means. You have to be someone so miserable and rotten that have no heart, no soul, and have no empathy, and just so greedy that you will just not care that at the end of the day, you're just accumulating more bad karma to you. And maybe you won't experience it now. Maybe you'll experience it right before you're out of this reality. We're not here for long. That's why it matters every single second or every minute what you do with your time. And a lot of us, we're trying to adjust with capitalism, but also turning into capitalists, like shifting the status quo. And we have to progressively do that, even if it makes us uncomfortable, and even if it makes other people uncomfortable, even if people go against you and try to not only gaslight you that that's not possible, or that can be done, or every time you expose the truth and talk about the truth, that in order for healing, because we all need healing, okay? That's why decolonization is also a very sacred work educationally, and then it needs to be added into education. But that's another protest that after the genocide that we should be doing, absolutely, and also shifting from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuels, right? Because we are in that point. We were that point 7 years ago. Environmental sciences, we've been talking about this nonstop, but every time I look at the data or do the calculation and create in our community, we understand, we're like, fuck, like, you know, and then we see now Greta like going to jail and stuff like that, and we're like, oh, we're experiencing that already. Like a lot of climate activists, most of us I was like, oh, so it took her to finally stand up for Palestine, and most of us we are against genocide and ethnic cleansing and stuff like that. You understand? At the end of the day, the accumulation of karma that we are accumulating, it's not the same as theirs. So this is why they attack. This is why they project. And pay attention that when they tell you something that they say or accusing that you're doing, most of the time they are confessing themselves. They are confessing. Most colonial settlers, that's their job, their motto. So when that happens, you will understand. Also, their cowardice always comes out, right? When they're trying to like hide and the truth and stuff like that, right? Like very childish, just psychotic energy. I honestly, at this point, you just cannot trust people who support this stuff. And yes, I'm speaking with people much higher up. They are all like, oh, how dare you speak bad about a colonized state that it's literally is genocide life on all our social platform. Even if you try to censor it, you can, the truth is there. It will never, you can never delete it. It hasn't been deleted for 400 years, even most of colonizers have tried. It's in our DNA. It always has been, and it will always will be. This is what we can recognize, and we know when the land, we respect land. We don't harm it, and it's not ours. We don't own it. That's capitalism, right?
Oh, I'm not political. Oh, I don't want to get into politics. It's giving major privilege. Nobody chooses to be political. We are forced into it. I, as a Palestinian, am living in a place where Palestine isn't even recognized as a country, and Palestinians aren't even recognized as a real people. And when I talk about Palestine, I get looked down upon like, oh, like, back into politics. That's my literal survival. Or even then, you have Palestinians themselves who are so whitewashed, be like, yeah, I don't want to get into politics, it's not for me. But in this case, it's even worse because it's like you're betraying your own people and you're pretending that you're not being erased and discriminated against and living in some land of delusion. Point is, when you say you're not political or look down upon me or someone else who's marginalized and accuse them negatively of being political, it shows you don't care about other people and you're just really selfish. You know, we need to look at all sides here. You are the problem, and stop being a coward and take the right stance to fight for justice for everyone.
I have something that is imperative for you to understand. And it's that research from an economist / anthropologist officially, tangibly has determined that for every person on this planet, actually more than every person, 8.5 billion people to abide by decent living standards, which are defined as shelter, hygiene, access to transportation. Basically, if you live in a stable household and have access to consistent food and medicine, what that life is like for you. This report deduced that it is possible for every single person on this planet to have all of those things with only 30% of current output, production, and energy use. So what the fuck does that mean? This means that all of the suffering that we've seen on this planet today and throughout history has been systematically manufactured. Basically, this is your concrete proof that scarcity is not real. It is something that is artificially created by the capitalist because the capitalist is insistent on hoarding resources to prevent humans who need resources for human existence to benefit from them. To put it in plain terms, there are more than enough resources on this planet right now to provide for everyone. We shouldn't have to do mutual aid. We shouldn't have to be walking past unhoused people on the street because we don't have any money ourselves to give. We shouldn't be having billions of our dollars in taxes going to slaughter other people in other countries while we can't even afford healthcare. I shouldn't have to grapple with the fact that a child probably had to die so I can even record this video on this smartphone right now. We have been socialized from birth to think that all of those things that I just mentioned are normal and that we should just not do anything about it because that's just the way things are and there's nothing new under the sun. And I'm here to tell you that that's bullshit. The only person who benefits from all of us collectively thinking that we have no impact on our material conditions is the capitalist. Not you, not your fellow man, not your family, not your friends, not your loved ones. The capitalist who will exploit you and exploit you and exploit you as long as you keep on chewing up and spitting out dollars. And so my main point is that this will continue indefinitely until we are all killed. Objectively, that is the truth. If it is not forced displacement by gunpoint by the state, then it will be the fact that they've created a world that is so uninhabitable for us to live on that we all burn to death or starve to death or drown to death. And I am not the first person to say this. At all, whatsoever. It's just that every time somebody says this, they are written off as being dramatic, they're written off as exaggerating, they're written off as not having a basis in reality. But the reason I'm saying any of this is because I have actually the most firm rooting in reality and this material basis in which we live. And in fact, ignoring our material conditions is actually what has caused the hell in which we live to evolve into ultra hell. So if you've made it to this point in the video, I need you to pause and think about how much of what I just said you actually digested. If it didn't make sense to you, I want you to start this video over and watch it again. And if it still doesn't make sense to you, comment your questions or DM them to me. Because the fate of humanity does not benefit at all from you being misinformed whatsoever. It is of the utmost necessity that every single person on this planet right now understands what I'm talking about. And it's not important because I'm saying it. It's important because it's true. So if you agree that you've digested this information, you're probably wondering, well, what do I do with this info now? Oh, well, I'm so happy you asked. You need to go to communistusa.org. That is a website for Revolutionary Communists of America. It is an organization that I'm a part of. You are going to read their manifesto, digest it, understand exactly what the stakes are and what we're up against. And then you're gonna press that join button so you can get in contact with the communists that are already around you in your area because they exist, they do. And while you wait for a comrade to get back to you, check out the links in my bio. I have a Discord of 1,400 communists called the Hot Communist Coalition, where people from all over the world talk about how we can fix this shit together. Or at the very least, talk about this report with somebody that you know. Send them the link. It's linked in the Better Lives for All episode of the Upstream podcast with Jason Hickel. Or you can just search the title directly on Science Direct. But you need to talk to other people about this. The knowledge that you have about these issues cannot exist in a vacuum. It will not do anything. Why do you think I'm sitting in my living room recording these silly little videos for y'all to consume? Because it's important. The capitalists will quite literally never relinquish their power willingly. It has to be taken by force. And that can only happen if the masses are educated and organized. And the first step to getting organized is talking to other people. You have to talk to other people. Please!
I'm sure a lot of you have seen this video already.
I know this is a minority view. I think colonialism gets a bad rap.
That was an American Israeli settler defending colonialism and the ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Gaza. And it's a video that I think we really need to dive into because there's a lot more than just that clip. That's an American Israeli settler defending the ongoing colonization of Palestine and the idea of mass ethnic cleansing in Gaza. And as absurd as that singular clip that you just saw is, there's a lot more to that entire video. So I want to go through, watch it, and analyze it as we go. That being said, let's dive in.
The idea of you coming from America to here, settling in potentially in Gaza, kicking Palestinians out, a lot of people would see that as settler colonialism.
It's not really colonialism, it's a return. My grandparents were kicked out of Israel by Arabs who were trying to establish a Palestinian state, and they had to leave for their survival, and I'm just coming back and fulfilling their dream. That would be the first thing. The second.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. The first thing that I think we really have to understand to ground our larger analysis here is that so-called Israel is a settler colony. Settler colonialism is a type of colonization in which a settler population enters a land, takes it over, and then forcibly annihilates, subjugates, or displaces the indigenous population with the intent of establishing a distinctly new society atop that stolen land. And beyond even the sort of academic definitions, early Zionist leaders were incredibly clear that what they were doing was colonialism. It was something they actually touted pretty openly. Theodore Herzl, the real founder of Zionism itself, was very clear in a letter to Cecil Rhodes where he described the project as being, in his words, something colonial. In other major political and ideological Zionist leaders like Zev Jabotinsky, the founder of revisionist Zionism, were incredibly clear that what they were doing was something colonial, and that realistically you could even go so far as to compare Palestinians to the Sioux or the Aztecs. He explicitly did that in his Iron Wall speech. And those are by no means the only two quotes. There's a lot of examples, so we can put that to bed. What is happening in Palestine is settler colonialism. But what's really interesting here is that she is saying that what she's doing is actually a return because her grandparents were kicked out of Palestine as a result of what she describes as Arabs, Palestinians, right, who supposedly kicked them out of Palestine as they tried to create their own state. It's interesting to me for two reasons. One, it's likely that her grandparents were settlers themselves. Likely they were displaced as a result of Israeli colonial violence and Palestinian resistance to it. What that means is that when they fled, they were likely fleeing a land that was never really theirs to begin with. But the second reason I find this interesting, arguably the more notable reason, is that she, as a descendant of her grandparents, was able to return to the land at all. Because that's actually something that Palestinian refugees and their descendants cannot do, as the Israeli project actively denies Palestinians their internationally recognized right of return of refugees. There are millions of Palestinians who are in refugee camps, both internally displaced across Palestine and externally displaced in bordering nations, who are unable to ever return to their ancestral homelands purely because the colony itself has dictated that that is not allowed to happen. And in Gaza, the area that will become the focal point of her interview in a moment, over 70% of the population are refugees, people who have been denied their ability to return to their ancestral homelands after being ethnically cleansed in the 1940s and onward. In essence, her return to the land is something that has been facilitated by this settler colonial entity, and is something that many, millions of people are not able to do. But yeah, back to the video.
Second thing is, I think that, and I know this is a minority view, I think colonialism gets a bad rap. Like, genocide is bad, but colonizing places that are genocidal and they have bad ideology, it's good to come in and correct their views.
First things first, notice how she went from saying this isn't really colonialism to saying, well, actually, I defend colonialism, and I think in this instance we should be doing it. In the span of less than a minute, she has actually flip-flopped on her position and kind of given the game away, and I think that's really important. But also, no, colonialism is not good, and the rhetoric she is using is rhetoric that has been used by colonial actors and entities for centuries. What she's doing essentially is saying that these savage people need us to come in and correct them, to guide them, to better their lives through subjugating them. Ultimately, it's just colonial rhetoric that is being utilized to justify horrific violence and subjugation.
What do you think should happen to the people who are already in Gaza?
So I think that there's a couple of possibilities. The one that I think is the most realistic is we got to ask other countries for help. I know that Spain was willing to take a couple of million. I know Russia said they would take a couple of thousand.
To a lot of people, that would sound like you're advocating for ethnic cleansing.
I don't think so, because Palestinian isn't an ethnicity, it's an ideology, and it's an ideology that says that they want Jews dead, and so we want them as far away from Jews as possible.
Okay, so a lot to unpack in just that small segment. First and foremost, Palestinians are not an ideology, but this is an interesting case of projection. Because Zionism is an ideology, and it is one she adheres to, and it's an ideology that is a racist, settler, colonial, imperialist one. And the outcome of the Zionist ideology has been mass ethnic cleansing, which I'll get into more in a second, genocide, displacement, subjugation, and outright brutalization of millions of people. She is actually taking the conditions that have been created by Zionism and applying that hypothetically to Palestinians. More simply put, she's analyzing the conditions on some level, realizing that they are genocidal and saying, well, Palestinians want to do this to us. But moving on, she is advocating for the mass ethnic cleansing of millions of people, right? She's saying, well, all these other countries should be able to chip in and take these refugees and bring them all in, and that would solve my problem. Because what she as a settler is identifying as the problem are Palestinians on the land at all. But critically, in wrapping this up as well, what she is advocating for is, like, by definition, ethnic cleansing. She's trying to create an ethnically homogenous zone through the mass displacement of a group of people based on racial, ethnic, or religious grounds. And ethnic cleansing functionally really has two core criteria, which is the expulsion of a population and the refusal of return. Both criteria are met due to the actions of the Israeli government. So yeah, that is ethnic cleansing. She's advocating for the mass ethnic cleansing of millions of people, and that is horrible because it's not just her opinion. There are countless settlers who share the exact same views she is currently espousing in that interview. And that should really tell us a lot about the current state of Israeli society. But yeah, as always, something we're thinking on. Free Palestine, Salamu Alaikum, and have a great day.
This fucking infuriates me. It infuriates me that the state broadcaster of the United Kingdom, funded by my license fee, is enabling genocide, is creating consent for ethnic cleansing by writing bullshit headlines that completely falsely give an idea of what's going on in the occupied West Bank. Families leave like it's fucking voluntary, like, oh, today's the day. Today's the day. We're going to pack up everything from where we've lived for fucking ever and leave because there's a little push by Israel. There's a push. There's a push. What the fuck does that mean? Lucy Williamson, you're a disgrace to the word correspondent. You're not a correspondent, you're a propagandist. This is fucking insane. As if this, there was just a day we just decided, well, we've been thinking about this for a while and yeah, today's the day. And this is at the same time as our state leaders, the press, the commercial media, the mainstream media are in an absolute frenzy of regret and grieving for the 6 hostages, Israeli hostages, found dead in Gaza yesterday. And there's whole obituaries in the fucking Guardian about this. Never mind that 54 Palestinians died on the same day in Gaza. And never mind particularly that the IOF narrative just handed out there that Hamas killed these 6 people has just been blindly repeated by everybody as if it's true. Think about this for a second, right? Think about this. Hamas kept these 6 people alive in the midst of a famine and a cataclysmic bombing campaign for over 10 months. They kept them alive, shuffled them around, kept them fed, kept them healthy, guarded them against the onslaught from the IOF, only to decide randomly on a day in early September, let's fucking kill them. Let's just kill them. Let's not say anything about it. Let's just I'm tired of looking after these guys. I'm tired of having leverage over the Israelis. Let's kill them. Or it suits the Israelis to, having found these people, to kill them under the Hannibal Directive, because the narrative that, again, points towards Hamas and gets people's ire and approbation up about Hamas at the same time as the little push is happening on the West Bank, where Hamas don't exist and where there are no hostages being kept. But in the meantime, the roads are being dug up, houses are being bulldozed, people are being kidnapped off the streets, in what is obviously a continuation of the campaign of ethnic cleansing against all Palestinians. It was nothing to do with hostages, nothing to do with Hamas, just everything to do with this fascist Israeli Zionist government's desire to wipe out Palestine and the Palestinians in order to create the greater Israel they've been talking about for years and years and years, with the backing of the United States and Western European countries, including the United Kingdom. Our complicity is an absolute disgrace and will be a stain on the reputation of our nation forever. But sure, Lucy, people in Jenin are just kind of waking up this morning going, I've been thinking about leaving for a good while. Today is a good day. Because, you know, it coincides with the little push by the Israelis. Fuck you, Lucy Williamson. Fuck the BBC. Fuck the Labour government. Fuck Joe Biden. Fuck Anthony Blinken. You're all war criminals and you have blood on your hands. And I pray for the day of shame that is undoubtedly coming your way. Fuck you all. Of course, we all want the hostages released. But when we say hostages, we have to include the more than 9,000 Palestinians currently in administrative detention in Israel. The people we know are being tortured, raped, held in the most inhumane conditions imaginable, some of them as young as 5 years old, set against the 100 or so Israeli hostages currently, as far as we know, still being held in Gaza. There is no equivalence here. And we know from what's going on in the West Bank and how the campaign in Gaza has been carried out, that the hostages have been the very last thing on Benjamin Netanyahu's mind. It is clearly a genocide. It is clearly an effort to remove Palestine and Palestinians from history. So again, I ask our politicians, when are you going to find it in your heart to write an A4 screed about the dead and dying of Palestine, instead of clutching your pearls over the death of IDF soldiers captured as prisoners of war? It's sick and it has to end.
Hello friends, today we are going to talk about the way in which the media minimizes Israeli aggression and dehumanizes Palestinians, and not necessarily in the way that you might think. So I am going to start with a particularly egregious example, and I just want to warn you, this is going to get pretty heavy. In July this year, a 24-year-old Palestinian man who is non-verbal and has Down syndrome was attacked by an IDF dog. This is according to testimony from his mother. This man here, who relied on his family to help him eat and drink, was deliberately separated from his family and was left to die alone. His decomposing body was found a week later. The way this man died, or was killed, I don't know what is even the appropriate term to use here. Either way, it was an injustice so profound that it is damn near unfathomable. And here is how the BBC headlined it: "The lonely death of Gaza man with Down syndrome." I think we can all agree that this is not it. Even the BBC agrees, because it changed the headlines to "Gaza man with Down syndrome attacked by IDF dog and left to die." Yeah, different. It then added this little addendum that it updated the headline to more accurately represent the article. Thing is, this is true. So why did the initial headline disregard the humanity of this man and also the callous brutality of those responsible for his death? As I said, this is a particularly egregious example, but there are so many examples in the media that, while not immediately obvious, have the same effect of minimizing Israeli aggression and dehumanizing Palestinians. Just this past weekend, Israel attacked the al-Masawi area of Gaza. This is one of the deadliest Israeli airstrikes since October 7. Here's how the New York Times covered it. Dozens killed after Israel targets architect of October 7 in airstrike. Okay, straight out the gate, and this may be an ungracious interpretation on my part, but this to me sounds like Israel tried to target the bad guy, killed a bunch of kids in the process. Now, if you didn't get that sentiment from the opening line, that's okay, you've got another chance with the second line, which is ostensibly a repeat of that. Israel targets bad guys, not civilians. And this is reported as a straight fact, by the way. Here it is. There's no allegedly here. So my question is, what evidence is there for this? Then we get to the statistics right here. At the time, 90 people killed, 300 wounded. Fuck me! I mean, you'd think that given the magnitude of this airstrike, you'd want to hear from at least one survivor, no? Alas, no. There seems to only really be room for one Israeli perspective, followed by another Israeli perspective, followed by the Israeli Prime Minister with a third Israeli perspective. Here's ABC's Instagram page. Dozens dead after Israel scales back Gaza City offensive against Hamas. Yeah, sorry. Is any part of this accurate? And look, here's a wee coffee emoji for those of us who might like staring at mutilated children with a soy latte. Now, you might think I'm being unfair, judging solely on Instagram captions, so let's go to the stories, shall we? I gotta tell you, options are limited because last I checked, which was between 2 and 3 p.m. on Sunday within 24 hours of the incident, 7-9, SBS, Crikey and news.com.au didn't even have the story on their websites. Here is the ABC story. Dozens of Palestinians dead after Israeli army targets Hamas military chief. The first voice we hear from, an Israeli official. Here is the Oz. Israel targeted Hamas military chief. First voice we hear from, Israel. Here is The Guardian, Hamas mastermind target of deadly Gaza strike. First voice we hear from, Israeli forces. And here is the New York Times for good measure. Israel launches major attack against senior Hamas commander. First voice we hear from, Israel. Now, I already know what all of these outlets are going to say. They're going to say, this is not fair, Jan. You know there is way more context in the piece. You know that we include all perspectives. You know that this is part of a much larger body of work. You know that we're just giving you the latest here. And yes, that is true. I do know all of that. But none of this negates the fact that in the aftermath of one of the deadliest Israeli airstrikes since this conflict began, what the Australian public sees is either nothing or 4 replica headlines that toe the Israeli line and 4 stories that privilege the Israeli perspective. And the reason I know they toe the Israeli line is because all 4 headlines are literally the first line of an Israeli government press statement. And the too long didn't read version of this press statement is ostensibly, we, Israel, target the bad guys. And if you think about what that really says, it is this. You see those dead Palestinians? You see the children that are pulled limb by limb from the sand? They were unfortunately in the way. Dead Palestinians are collateral damage because we target bad guys. And that is what every single one of these headlines is saying. And it is a choice. Every one of these outlets could have chosen a headline that didn't just regurgitate Israeli spin. It's very possible to do. So possible that the Sydney Morning Herald did it. Here's its headline. Israel kills more than 90 people in area it marked safe for Palestinians. You see how this headline is different to the others? Because you know that place where the Palestinians unfortunately got in the way? Yeah, Israel told them to go there. And every single one of these outlets knew that. So tell me, if you tell civilians to go to a particular area and then you target that area, are you targeting civilians or no? No? Okay, but what if you do it again and 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 again? Still no? Fuck, maybe it's still no. I mean, who am I to say otherwise? But given the fact that this attack comes 10 months into a plausible genocide, and given this context of which everyone is aware, and given that Israel and its leadership are before the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity, is it too much to ask that the entire Australian media, we're not ignoring the story, not get its headlines straight from the mouth of Benjamin Netanyahu? Like, is that too much to ask at this point or any point? You know, journalism, and not that I'm the expert, but I do know that it loves to espouse its own virtues. Fucking loves it. You go to any conference, you go to any awards ceremony, you do a journalism degree, the first thing you're going to get told is that journalism does two things. Two things. Anytime they want your money, they're going to ask you for money because they do two things. And those two things are they hold power to account and they give voice to the voiceless. Where was that here? Maybe it was in paragraph 8.
I saw a video recently of Zionist settlers talking about how excited they were to be Zionist settlers because their new home felt like a New Jersey suburb. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the specific act of violence, the kind of person you have to be to feel entitled to killing people, stealing their land, one of the most beautiful lands in the whole entire world, causing environmental damage to that land, destroying their homes, and then building on top of that land some of the ugliest fucking structures known to history just to build another New Jersey.
It took Wells Fargo 4 days to notice that an employee had died in their cubicle. And this is just one example of how capitalism is killing us. Another example of how a Canadian man has received a doctor's approval for euthanasia because he didn't want to be homeless. And the main reason he's applying to unalive himself is he became poor. Not only that, because of capitalism, there is now a modern form of slavery due to for-profit prisons where they farm out incarcerated people to work in different corporations. All of this is happening while both political parties are making it no secret exactly who they serve, which is the corporate oligarchy and the capitalists. And these are the same capitalists that will fire people for not responding to their texts or calls when outside working hours.
So the New York Times has been one of the worst. It always has been bad. I mean, I'll never forget, I think it was 2014 when the IDF struck that cafe of patrons watching the World Cup. And the New York Times wrote the headline, "Missile finds patrons watching World Cup in cafe." And I thought, it's as if the missile was just an autonomous person who just was looking, where are the people? And like just comes in the cafe. I mean, the way that they actually do these mental gymnastics to absolve Israel from accountability is stunning. I think, every paper of record, almost every mainstream media institution has these design, like internal requests for the staff to follow certain protocols, especially when we're talking about Israel-Palestine. You're not supposed to say the word Palestine. These are all internally put out to basically say they're style guides, essentially. Don't say this, don't say that, don't refer to Palestine. We saw like MSNBC anchors had to apologize for showing that shrinking map, even though it was completely wholly accurate. We saw NPR had to apologize for saying the word Palestine instead of occupied territory. So we know how this goes, but New York Times took it even further where they actually issued a style guide internally to their staff saying, you can't use the word occupation. You can't use the word genocide. You can't use the word ethnic cleansing. Okay, so you can't use the word military occupation. Okay, now you're just literally not able to say a fact that is like recognized by the international community, which Israel's flagrantly violating. So if you're not allowed to literally just say the truth and depict what Israel's doing according to international law, like what are we talking about here? So I think that was really revealing when that came out, that, oh, the New York Times has taken it much further, where they have really, put their bias on clear display. And their allegiance is very clear too. I mean, they've hired people who are glorifying the IDF and are liking tweets calling to turn Gaza into a slaughterhouse. They're hiring random people with no experience to adjudicate the mass rape allegations, while they're firing award-winning journalists for simply signing on to petitions calling for Israel to stop, its genocidal onslaught. So you see this double-sided, this double standard rather played out again and again and again. But I think, there's plenty of accounts who correct the headlines of the New York Times, and every single time the New York Times puts out a headline on this issue, they do the passive voice, right? Israelis are slaughtered, Palestinians just drop dead, as if they just dropped dead from a heart attack. I mean, they're always removing who is doing the killing, who is carrying out these policies. And so I think that, if the New York Times and Washington Post did their job, we would not see polls come out like we just did from Pew and back in March that said half of Americans have no idea if more Israelis have died than Palestinians. What an incredible indictment of the corporate media. Or perhaps it's actually showing that they've done exactly what they're designed to do and what their utility is, which is obfuscate this issue, confuse everyone, and, make it so that Americans have no idea what the hell is really happening. It is disgusting. They've been a tool for genocide, and they deserve to be held accountable.
750,000 Israelis are protesting to get a deal to get the hostages back. And I'm finding it, for lack of a better word, slightly amusing that it's taken 11 months for less than 10% of the Israeli population to have the cognitive awakening that you cannot have a military solution to a political problem. Like, you could have asked me, you could have DM'd me, you could have asked a child who's not been subjected to the Israeli education system. You could have asked a fireman who's ever rescued a cat from a tree. You could have asked ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT, what is the best way to get hostages back? It says, assess the situation, understand the motives of the captors. The captors released a PDF document like a month in, laying out exactly what their motives were, and you ignored it. All of which were, by the way, in alignment with international law, calling on the ICC, calling on the ICJ, calling on the United Nations, all of which were congruent with the demands of the Palestinians 6 years before today, when they were peacefully protesting and you killed hundreds of them and injured tens of thousands of them. You're not good at assessing the situation. Engage professionals. You went to the UN General Assembly with a Timu shredder and physically shredded the UN Charter while accusing the UN General Assembly of figuratively shredding the UN Charter while you were standing inside the UN. Negotiate. Open lines of communication with the captors. You carried out a political assassination of the chief negotiator while violating the sovereignty of another country. Prioritize safety. You have bombed the Gaza Strip with your hostages in it to such an extent that, according to experts, it will take at least 15 to 20 years just to clear the rubble from the Gaza Strip. Safety is not a priority for you. Develop a plan. I mean, who knows what Israel's plan is? Aside from the fact that they're annexing unprecedented amounts of land, both in Gaza and the West Bank in particular, we know the plan is to colonize the remaining 20% of Palestine that you have not already colonized. But as far as getting the hostages back, who knows what the fuck your plan is? A military officer that was interviewed by Middle East Eye months ago said that the hostages are no longer of a concern to anyone. So figure that shit out amongst yourselves. Maintain communication. Keep all involved parties, including the hostages and their families, informed and calm throughout the process. Fam, when Ahmad came back and said they baked him a cake, you said that he had Stockholm Syndrome. Noah Argamani had to put up an Instagram story to clarify that she was not beaten by her captors, but that she was injured because Israel won't stop bombing the fuck out of Gaza. Now, we know that less than 10% of the Israeli population is not having this revolutionary cognitive awakening because they give a fuck about Palestinian life. Back in January, the Tel Aviv University poll showed that 94% of Jewish Israelis were either okay with the genocide or wanted a worse genocide to be visited upon the Palestinians. So we know that's not why this is happening. But I'm glad that it's happening. But like 11 months ago, you could have just asked anybody that has the cognitive faculty of logical reasoning, and we would have told you that, according to recent estimates, 400,000 Palestinians did not have to die for you to maintain a stronghold on your racist, Jewish supremacist society while gaslighting the world about your hostages that you never gave a fuck about.
Colonial and stuff. Anyways, here's your message. Sorry it took so long, but that's what it is. Your message is gonna be long with some truth, because if you're not this person yet, or you haven't met this person yet who you're supposed to meet to do this, then you need to know this information that's going to be attached to this video, okay? Because you are one of the catalysts. And I don't know, I just need to be obedient. The same thing that I told that person that I got attacked in the funeral. I had to be obedient. I don't need to be doing this. I could be doing anything else, right? But I'm doing this because not only it matters to that person in not only in the now and the present, but also it could be in the future. I don't know. Who am I to decide, and who am I to judge or question what our Creator decides to use my intuition and my ability, which I have since I'm a child. And this is why it's so hard for people to understand. And I'm not here to justify it or try to defend myself as well. I know who I am. I don't need to, you know what I'm saying? And also, I'm very capable of emotional and critical thinking intelligence as well, okay? So anybody who comes to me, especially with all this decolonization work that I've done, and thank you to the Palestinian Congo and Sudan for exposing everything and all the things that we need to change from within our consumption, within our food, or within, how we speak to people, to be kind, more empathetic, because we know that capitalism endorses lack of empathy. We are understanding this now. We see it on social media. We see it in the media news. We get so super disappointed where they don't actually talk about the things that trauma that we just literally saw. But there's a trauma, shared trauma that we have the privilege just to see. We don't have the experience to experience it. We don't have the energy to even survive it. These people have been dealing with a genocide for 11 months. And then Sudan and Congo is even more time. And then they have the audacity to tell these people, gaslighting them, because there's no documentation for the Congo and Sudan, that that's not really happening because they didn't have enough evidence. So this is why the Supreme Court, of course, the United States and other areas saying that, oh no, Apple, because Apple is being sued by multiple countries, multiple people, okay? And Tesla as well. But no, that's not exposed in the media because no, of course not, right? Just like the genocide is not being exposed as much as it should be. And then this is why these people are able to, go into encampments and people peacefully protesting, attacking them, or even sending their little coups, mob, and gangs, to attack them, right? And then act like, oh, I don't know what's going on, But they are very aware of what's going on. They are the one paying, endorsing, and, paying influencers. I've never seen that. That's how you know. You don't need to be against genocide and fight for liberation, not for everybody, and to have equal rights, and to, help other countries live the privileges and have the things that you are able to. And also, most of us live of those who are in really intense conditions right now that they don't need to be. But their resources, their land is being taken from them. Their women, great, right? And all kinds of things oppressive and unjust. And yes, slavery still happens. Prison, pipeline, education, all that is still happening. So a lot of it because you're not aware, and they benefit. These people in power benefit, and whoever you are talking about this. This is why, and also you're very mysterious. Like whoever you are, you speak about this and then you continue going, you keep going, okay? So it says you're mysterious, so I can never seem to figure you out. Sometimes I feel like you're hiding something from me. Never really know where I stand with you. And this is not just this person feeling it. This is like collectively, this is what most people feel. Like you're so like, whoa. But the thing is, this is actually also for your protection. You have to be strategic of how you do your work, because most of y'all, you are poets and you're storytellers. And as well, you have this goddess energy, you have healing energy. So a lot of you could consider yourself like a empath or clairvoyant or something like that. And don't come with me in the comments, you fucking weird ass Christians, with your Bible study that, clairvoyant is demonic. Yo, check yourself before you wreck yourself, okay? Anyways, it says, well done, thou good and faithful servant, Matthew 25:21. That's your first scripture. Okay, and it landed on the storyteller. Okay, so storyteller, the light of this is ability to experience and express life through stories and symbols. Okay, Story could be significant, symbols could be significant. You could be getting signs already before you got this message, or you will get more as you do this. Also, prayer helps with this. Fasting, you do have to do a little fasting. So ask the Holy Spirit, God, whoever you believe. I don't know. This is to there's something that when you fast, or when you are in your prayers, or are in your element, okay, hermit, whatever you want to call it, you tap into your own being, which is most of y'all is being blocked since you're a child. They've been trying to block this awareness, because when you are aware of people doing stuff to you, and because they already see not only your future, they saw this is someone who have seen, or could be that person or you, that they have seen your legacy. They have looked into your life without your consent, so which is another violation of law in the spiritual realm. So this is another click to bad karma that's coming to whoever's been doing this. And this is like a lot of people, a group of people. So for a lot of y'all, this is also, you will know, maybe during your lifetime or even in this lifetime, I don't know, but I'm guided to say this. Zionists already curse. The Zionist word is already cursed. It's showing right now in our faces, because the liberation of the Palestinian is coming very soon. Absolutely. Israel is falling. The occupied Palestine, because Israel should not exist. It should not. And I'm not saying this, don't come to my words and saying like, oh, she's anti-Semitic. They have devalued so much anti-Semitism so that they can continue getting away with war crimes and butchering children, women, and men, okay? For 11 months now. This is why we cannot, by any means necessary, and listen to me carefully, this is just part of the decolonization as well, and they will get mad because I'm telling you this, but you need to remember this. This is kind of like Malcolm X and all of that combined, okay, all that lessons. And please, 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 I beg you, read your history, but discern as well. Do your own education, okay? Speak with the real revolutionary fighters, the real people. Read their books, okay? I have REBUKE.com has a link of, it's called Bookshop, okay? You click that and it's all decolonization books. Most of those books I already read. Most of that I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read, okay? But most of the books that you need right now to start, it's there, okay? So don't say to people, oh, I don't know how to do that, I don't know where to start. Yes, you do know. If you're in this channel, you do know. Most of my people here, they do know. And they're doing the work. Inshallah, glory be to God, I know it for a fact. Okay? Why? Because we pray, we manifest, we do the right thing here. We focus on the empathy and decolonization, which is a sacred work. So when you do that work, you don't need to be in competition or comparing to anybody. There's no conversion or trying to change people's, you know what I'm saying? It just comes naturally. And this is why ideologies and toxic, colonial, and white supremacy just crumbles. And it's happening right now. It's just, unfortunately for a lot of us, we need to start educating yourself a little faster and waking up, okay? Because there's people on the line. There's still genocide happening. There's still kids being bombed. And then have the audacity, after we watch the videos that they send on themselves after surviving the bomb, we create content for them because they can't post it because they're trying to survive. And then we have the people who hold this, the institutions telling us that that's not what we're seeing. That's too much. Oh, warning, because it's too graphic. Can you imagine if we had this ability in the past during the time where Indigenous were massacred, the creation of USA and Canada, right? Can you imagine? Or even the Holocaust, right? The concentration camps and stuff. We only had little pictures. Like, we didn't have the real detail, the real stuff. And now we're experiencing the new version of the Nazi, of the Holocaust during in 1945. That is insane. And I repeat, the occupied Palestine, Israel does not exist, and it was occupied in the 1948. I don't give a fuck what you think. Go fuck into your history. I don't care. And I did not invent this Zionist word. Let me just say this. They created it so they can masquerade themselves as Jewish, but they're not Jewish. A real Jew, okay? A real Jew is someone like this.
I'm 7 generations in Palestine. Yes, my mother told me, she remember we used to live with the Palestinian neighbors in such a good relationship. We used to babysit each other, the children. In the Jewish holidays, they bring over the children to the Muslim neighbors. In the Muslim ones, they bring over the children to Jewish neighbors. We have no problem. The problem here is not the religion. The problem is occupation, killing, take away the land from people. This is the problem completely. Palestinians don't hate Jews, they hate occupiers.
Occupiers.
No difference if it's a Jew, if it's a French, it's English, no difference. We have to bring this to the attention to know the problem is not the religion. The problem is the occupation.
Anyways, I gotta go. But yeah, that's just an example. Some of you are poets. As you know, most of Gaza, writers, poets, scientists, health workers, teachers, educators, bombed, wiped out, right? You know, trying to erase them because that's their motto. That's what Zionism is. It's just, and the gaslighter too. If you actually have ever dealt with one, they will tell you like, oh God, Palestine doesn't exist, and they give you pointers and everything to shut you up, right? And make this entitlement like, oh, let me show you, like they don't exist, you know. Oh no, it's not true. We're not doing genocide. Like they believe their own delusional because facing the truth is too hard to like for them, so they believe their delusion because the truth is too hard to like accept. Right? Because their ignorance and their ego and their pride and their shame, or not even, these people have no shame or guilt. Like, honestly, they say these things, they have no shame and guilt, and that is dangerous. Right away, you understand that that person is like, in humanity is dead. And you feel bad for that spirit. For a lot of us, we're like, damn, what a sad, miserable, pathetic person. I was gonna say psychopath, which most of y'all, if you're in that energy, please seek help. Please go to a good therapist though, because we need to also decolonize therapists as well. Okay, I'm so glad my therapist doesn't, thank God. But a lot of y'all, you have some therapists that are like, oh, just don't watch, just close. That's crazy that any health or anybody in any institution tells you guys that you being bear witness because you understand that the media and everybody else entirely wants you to accept, like they're normalizing or trying to. We should never do that. Normalize genocide. Like they're making it genocide as if like the small, like it's nothing. Excuse me? Like that is disgustingly white supremacy, racism, all the demonic stuff that it could combine. Like that's what the legacy you guys want to leave behind? This shit? I don't think so. And it's not going to happen. Whoever you are, you're meant to continue for those. Yeah. You always come back. For whoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and my mother. Matthew 12:50. This deck shows some of the Jesus like white and other ones brown, which I like. I was like, okay, but he was brown, just Palestinian Jew, okay? But anyways, my point is you both are in, maybe you are more spiritual, like I hate when people say that because you are a spirit here having a human experience. So we all spiritual. It's just that some of us, because of free will, thank glory be to God, he gave us that. We're able to choose whether we continue our path in our spiritual journey, which is, that's what we're doing here, the colonization, changing the system, growing and creating a world where there's no genocide, violence, oppression, and capitalism, right? And fascism and imperialism, because those are toxic, not only for us, but our planet as well. We are all connected. And that's the reason capitalism has created this disconnection and thinking that nature and us are separated when we are the same. We are connected. Everything is. What's happening in Gaza or Palestine, Congo, and Sudan affects us all in every possible level, whether in sickness, whether it's spiritual, whether it's emotionally, whatever. We are made empathetic. We're made to care. We're made to create community. Unity. This is what the people in power fear, and this is what they're trying to keep it separated. If you haven't come into that realization yet, you will, or this video will make sure that it does, okay? You are needed, okay? A lot of you are, especially those who don't really resonate with this, but you have decided to stay, to learn, to look at the videos, to bear witness. Beautiful. Make sure that you are sharing the content as well. The creators, if I'm not able to put in the description below, either of them have those little handles that you can go yourself, go to the Instagram or TikTok, find them, post it on your story, post it on your social media, okay? It does matter. This is why the censorship and the suppression and trying to shut us up, okay? But most of us who are in this work, in this movement, it has to continue going, and we can never stop because it is working. Occupied Palestine, it is crumbling. They're even recruiting other places in the world to, you know, and another thing I saw also, that they're leaving that place because now there's nothing. Everything is being destroyed. So where are these people going? And these are the people for 11 months have protested. Not that the fact that that this place that should not exist should not be doing the genocide. No, they were protesting because the hostages that was the revolution fighters had to you know, it's as part of the agreement, because remember, this did not start on October 7th. Okay, this is before that. Okay, so we need to also understand that at the end of the day, there's a lot to unpack. So for a lot of y'all, if I'm repeating myself, it's because this is stuff that we've learned in the past, and for a lot of you, it could be something that I need to repeat myself. For whoever is new here, you can look at other videos, listen to the podcast as well. I talk about this. There's multiple videos for 11 months of content of evidence that I already sent to the ICC and the ICJ, and I have to continuously repeat this because it is the truth. Now, the next thing, whoever you are, this is what you probably are doing as well. You're not, this is for someone outside of the status quo, that obviously you have responsibilities and duties that you do in the world that also could be jeopardized by you doing this work. Most of us, are like, okay, well, it's just, you know, that life of that person being murdered, yeah, we should stop. Anywhere we can, we should do it, you know, regardless of whatever. And also that too, prayer helps. When you're with God, like he protects you, he protects your finances, he protects your work, he protects anything while you're doing his work. Decolonization is his work. Do not put religion or anything like that, because it's not gonna work. Whoever you are, this person, listen to other people's opinions. You are decolonizing. Most of us, people who decolonize, who are psychic or seers, very highly gifted, empath, highly empathetic, the Hayoka, yeah, that comes with responsibilities as well when you have that, okay? So I'm letting you know as someone who is dealing with this in this very moment, okay? Ghosted, this is normal for you. You have people that ghost you, but also some of you needed to ghost some people who are just very toxic, very immoral. They have no morals or values. They don't value other people's children, life, or anything like that. So for a lot of you, yeah, you became mysterious, but only for those people who cannot control you and abuse you. So a lot of you, you are the worst nightmare for a narcissist, aka the system. Because that's what it is. This system is conditioned and programmed to create narcissists, sadists, abusers, enabling genocide. This is what Palestinian, Congo, and Sudan has exposed to all of y'all. And you still don't get it? A lot of people think that this is something like, oh, well, nobody's gonna know. Nobody's gonna know. Like, you know, so a lot of y'all, you have a lot of integrity and you stand on your truth and that integrity, and you piss a lot of people off. Like, a lot.